Thank you for joining our session on the use of a virtual exchange in the Russian classroom. My name is Yuliana Gunn, and currently I am a Russian instructor at the University of Colorado at Boulder. I've worked as an instructor at Arizona State University's Malikian Center Star Talk program and served as a lead instructor for 3 years.
And my name is Irina Kogel. Currently, I am lecturer in Russian at Davidson College, and I was also an instructor at the Star Talk program at Arizona State University. The Star Talk program, whose virtual exchange component we're going to discuss today, ran for 4 consecutive summers from 2016 to 2019. The program was organized in collaboration with the Malikian Center for Russian, Eurasian, and East European Studies at Arizona State University, and we are grateful to them for their support. The non-residential program offered students in grades 8 through 12 a fully immersive 3-week Russian course. Students began the program with no prior experience, and the aim at the end of the 3-week period was for students to reach a novice mid-proficiency level on the ACTFL scale. As a StarTalk funded program, the ASU Summer Russian Camp was committed to supporting the StarTalk mission of increasing the number of U.S. citizens learning, speaking, and teaching critical need foreign languages. Through focus on interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational language learning, learners acquired a greater understanding of the peoples and cultures of the Russophone world and motivation to continue to study Russian. The asynchronous and synchronous virtual exchange with Russian-speaking host families in Bishkek, which we are describing in this presentation, was at the heart of the program. The goal of communicating in a real-life context with target language speakers structured the vocabulary, grammar, and content covered in each week.
The StarTalk program is wonderful in that it allows teachers to implement the latest pedagogical methods in the classroom. The theme of our program was Trading Places, Arizona, Bishkek. Our high school students were preparing for a very real possibility of studying Russian in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. I approached the development of our program and lessons by relying on the backward design method of curriculum development. The backward design method consists of setting specific learning goals and learning checks, such as formative and summative assessments first, and then choosing instructional methods that would ensure that learners achieve these goals. Formative assessments consisted of informal language checks, observations of dialogues, and a final summative creative project. All lessons and assessments were based on learning goals, and each lesson was presented in a culturally relevant context. Over the course of the 3 weeks, we focused on 3 units. The first, talking about myself and my family. The second, my interests, foods, places I'd like to visit. And the third, my home and homestay. Our program learning goals consisted of a series of ACTFL can-do statements, and our course content was geared towards creating an environment in which students had the opportunity to make themselves understood in a real-world situation using age-appropriate lexicon. The implementation of a backward design process provided us with the ability to outline course content, pre-select instructional materials, and request materials that met our learning targets from host families in Bishkek. One unique aspect of our StarTalk program at Arizona State was that we implemented both a synchronous and asynchronous component in our curriculum design. Our classes met Monday through Friday for 4 hours. On the first day of instruction, students were introduced to new vocabulary and grammatical structures. On the second day, students worked with pre-recorded videos that were specifically tailored to our learning targets made by our wonderful host families in Bishkek. This made up our asynchronous component. For example, when covering the unit on interests, food, and places I'd like to visit, students watched a pre-recorded video in which they went shopping at a Bishkek market to buy ingredients for a popular Kyrgyz dish, lagman, virtually of course. Students worked with graphic organizers to create a shopping list of food items they would need to buy, and played a game in which teams went shopping in the classroom by selecting food item cards. In a subsequent lesson, students virtually visited one of the biggest malls in Bishkek and went clothes shopping. On the slide, you can see an example of a graphic organizer that we used for the shopping. These videos allowed students to be immersed in the target language, exposed them to real-world authentic materials, and served as a virtual excursion. In the next slide, you will see an example of an asynchronous video that was used in the classroom.
Здравствуйте! Сегодня я приехала на базар, чтобы купить продукты и приготовить лагман. Так выглядит наш базар. Здесь продают очень много разных продуктов. Чтобы приготовить лагман, нам нужно купить мясо. Мясо мы можем купить в мясном отделе. Здесь продают много мяса. Это мясо. Чтобы приготовить лагман, нам нужно купить овощи. Овощи мы можем купить в овощном отделе на базаре. Здесь мы можем купить с вами лук, пекинскую капусту, помидоры, перец, зеленый или красный, зеленый лук, укроп, зелень, как сельдерей или базилик.
After students had engaged with the asynchronous video presentations, the cycle continued on the third day. The focus of this follow-up day was to practice and expand on our learning targets and prepare to speak with the Bishkek host families live via Skype the next day. This usually involved reinforcement of new vocabulary and practice dialogues, as well as discussions of Russian and Kyrgyz customs. On the fourth day, we met with Bishkek host families in real time, which provided students with the opportunity to use the language skills they had gained during the course of the week in a spontaneous real-life context. One example of asynchronous meeting we would like to discuss took place during the home and homestay week. The goal for the meeting was to have students introduce themselves to our host families and get to know them better. The setting for the meeting was a virtual dinner to which students were invited. Our host families prepared traditional Kyrgyz dishes and showed them to students. Vocabulary about food came alive in this context as students talked about which dishes they would like to try. To make sure that students had a chance to get to know multiple host families and could practice introducing themselves and talking about food several times, the class was broken up into 3 groups. In each Skype session, the host families modeled the language that was needed, and students had the immediate satisfaction of having meaningful target language interactions with the host families. The opportunity to have similar conversations with 3 different host families gave students the chance to increase their confidence about their own language output and to see the differences among the host families. The opportunity to reinforce linguistic output and enrich students' awareness of the target culture was an important element of the virtual exchange. In the video that follows, you will see excerpts from one Skype session in which students were introduced to traditional Kyrgyz dishes and to the members of the host family. Part of the video has been edited out to respect the privacy of our students, but you will still be able to hear how students interacted with the host family.
Здравствуйте. Здравствуйте. Я сегодня хочу пригласить вас к себе на ужин. У нас сейчас уже ночь, и я на ужин приготовила... Так, видно, да?
Что мы говорим? Очень, очень вкусно. Очень вкусно. Очень красиво.
Это мой муж пришел. Давайте сперва познакомлю.
Здравствуйте.
Его зовут Айсал. А это моя дочка старшая. Айдай, здравствуйте.
Здравствуйте.
Ее зовут Айдай. Асла, иди ко мне. Это моя вторая дочка. Ее зовут Асылай. Привет, скажи. Громче.
Привет.
Так, я люблю плов. Плов. Я сегодня приготовила плов. Это плов. Плов готовится из риса. Плов готовится из риса. Рис. Это Мясо.
Мясо.
Мясо. Мгм. Это наш кыргызский национальный хлеб. Лепешка.
Лепешка. Лепешка.
Our aim for this presentation has been to show how virtual exchanges can be a powerful tool in the language learning context. For programs that seek to organize instruction around content-based modules, a virtual exchange can be an effective tool for structuring a curriculum. Virtual exchanges can also be used to supplement the materials in a textbook. By providing students with an interactive real-world experience, the virtual exchange helps to motivate learners. When students can clearly see how the grammar and vocabulary topics they are studying are tied to their ability to communicate with native speakers of the target language, they have more of an incentive to challenge themselves in and out of the classroom. As a result, their proficiency improves significantly. Though the length and format of the Russian StarTalk program at ASU was particularly well suited to a virtual exchange of this kind, the potential for learners to benefit from a virtual exchange exists at all levels of instruction and within a broad range of instructional contexts.
We designed and applied this virtual exchange component specifically for our immersive language program, but we believe that a virtual exchange can be implemented and adapted to current course content in any classroom. For example, instead of using can-do statements as benchmarks, language teachers can use chapter learning goals as benchmarks instead. If you're covering a unit on verb to motion, you can add an asynchronous component to your existing lessons. This could be a short video of a tour guide walking through a museum, and students are then tasked with describing the types of motion they saw in the video. The formative assessment check then becomes observation of student dialogues as they describe what they saw in the video. Another great resource that has become more readily available since the start of the pandemic are virtual museum tours. Thus, the instructor or a native tour guide could lead a virtual reality museum tour. Then, working in groups or pairs, students can complete an online scavenger hunt using only the target language to decide where to go. The completion of the scavenger hunt, a performance task project, would then serve as a learning check. In 2018, our students participated in the ACTFL Assessment of Performance and Proficiency in Languages, APPLE. The APPLE assesses the ability of a candidate to engage in linguistic tasks on the topics of personal, social, and academic relevance across the three modes of communication and is designed specifically for K-12 learners. By the end of our 3-week program, which equated to roughly 60 hours of instruction, our target level was novice mid for speaking, listening, and reading. From the graph, you can see that 96% of our students were rated at novice mid or higher on the interpersonal listening and speaking, and 84.5 on interpretive listening. We scored 66.6 on interpretive reading. Overall, we were very pleased with the proficiency gains that our students made in just 3 short weeks, especially in interpersonal listening and speaking. We believe that the virtual exchange component was overall an effective pedagogical tool, which drastically increased student interest, motivation, and engagement in learning Russian.
We'd like to end the presentation with a short clip of student testimonials and highlights from the program. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to your questions.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Маша. Меня зовут Саша. Меня зовут Виолетта. Мне 15 лет. Я люблю торт, пекинская капуста и арбуз.
Я хочу пойти в торговый центр Gunn.
У меня есть кошка и собака.
Я люблю есть блины, пекинская капуста.
I've studied French and Japanese before. I've spent 2 years in both of those languages, but even with just 3 weeks of immersion Russian, I feel like I've progressed much faster in that than anything else.
We strive to teach language through meaningful, real-world content and interactions. Not only does this help our students gain in proficiency, it more importantly perhaps instills in them a true love for learning about other languages and cultures.
I really liked Skyping with the people in Bishkek. We got to see a lot about what they do, and they showed us their food, like what they had for dinner. When we'd messed up, they kind of knew what we were saying a little bit, and when they messed up, we kind of knew what they were saying.
I just like culture. I like learning about people. I like understanding people. I really want to go to Russia and kind of like experience Russia from a Russian's point of view.
I thought 3 weeks was gonna be like days of the week, whether we actually learned so much like interpersonal stuff. It was pretty amazing. Like I only knew how to say maybe Privyet, da, Nyet at the start. It's really amazing like we could talk to people like actually in Russia.
I learned a lot because I knew absolutely nothing, and right now like I can say a little introduction of myself and basic sentences. I was absolutely definitely surprised.
It's like they were getting us ready to move there already.
It's really important to be able to speak to people of different cultures, and this definitely gave me a start to my language learning journey.